There is no disease that is incurable. See? And I've been researching on bushes for a good long time. And I have found many bushes to be proven, 100% beneficial in curing many destructive diseases, you know.
So the bush doctor who's from the old tradition
Saying,
is also a mystic man with a message.
True. Because to make bush medicine, you have to be mystic. See, because it takes spiritual ingredients. It's not just getting the bush and putting them together. The mind have to be in the medicine, see, for it to work.
Just a brief snippet of the 1979 interview with reggae legend Peter Tosh and Daniel Calderon. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening's edition of the Truth Gangsters podcast. It's a pleasure having you as usual. As tonight, we're going to be discussing a reggae great, a reggae giant, Peter Tosh. You know, I have long held the view that every man or woman of integrity must of necessity strive to live a life with as little contradictions as humanly possible. The journey of life is such that we are constantly growing, learning, evolving, and meeting different versions of ourselves along our journey. Few of us are brave and honest enough to live our truth in each and every phase of our lives, and to do so unapologetically. Such is the life of the legendary Peter Tosh, who told us in his song, I Am That I Am, that I am not in this world to live up to your expectations, neither are you here to live up to mine. Winston Hubert McIntosh, born in October 1944, in Grange Hill in the parish of Westmoreland, was abandoned by his father and later his mother, raised by his aunt until he left Westmoreland to live in Trenchtown, Kingston, where he met the other members of the legendary Wailers group, Bob Marley and Bonnie Wailer. Of course, we know the history of the Wailers and their impact on music in Jamaica and music across the world. However, Peter, having seen the success that was gained by the signing of the Wailers to the former manager Chris Blackwell, eventually left the group, citing irreconcilable differences between him and Chris Blackwell, who he hilariously once said of Chris, if him black, show me one thing we're black about him, and if him well, show me one thing that's well with him. He's Christopher Whitehurst. Of course, we know Peter was a great poet that was versed in deconstructing the colonial language, eloquent, handsome, a 6'4" musical militant, known to be uncompromising and unshaking in his political and philosophical positions. A man who walked the walk and talked the talk. He preached health, and he was often seen in interviews eating fresh fruit. He spoke of herbs and is well known to have used herbal bush medicine regularly. He spoke out against fast food in his song Mystic Man. Many people may not know he's also a black belt in karate. And he did all of this without having any formal education. He taught himself to play the guitar. It is said that he made his first guitar out of sardine cans and wires, always talking about the shit stem He was an anti-apartheid spokesperson, anti-Zionist, often seen performed in the Palestinian head rap Kefiyeh. This was a man who stood on principle and stood on business. And so we have to honor him. We have to look into his life to see what made him who he was. Where can we learn from him? And if it is that he fell at some point, where did he fall? Where did he trip? Or who placed the stone? So this is what we are going to be discussing tonight. Thanks to everyone for joining. So, Peter Tosh. Wow, where do we begin in our discussion about Peter Tosh? One of the things I noticed about just living in Jamaica and listening to the way our musical history is discussed, a lot of people know about Bob Marley's, his song collections, his albums. But very few people know Peter Tosh. Yes, they may know him by name, but very few people actually know about his songs. Very few people can cite his lyrics with ease, the same ease as they would with Bob Marley. And even the famous One Love Peace concert that everybody talks about. Everybody talks about Bob Marley's performance at this concert. They often show the clips of Bob Marley holding the hands of the two heads of political parties at the time, Edward Seaga and Michael Manley. But very few people know that Peter Tosh was actually at that same concert. Peter Tosh actually performed on that same stage at that same concert. And during his performance, he gave, I think, a close to 40-minute speech, which some people describe as some of the greatest piece of oratory you have heard from a reggae performer or any performer. So many people don't know that. And yet, we laud Bob Marley as this revolutionary, radical, no-nonsense performer, artist. And not to take anything away from Bob, which I don't believe we should, but I do know that it raises questions. If Bob was so revolutionary, why are his songs promoted and Peter Tosh's songs are shadow banned? To this day, you can turn on the radio at any given time and you will at some point hear a Bob Marley song, whether it's a love song, whether it's a song about Zimbabwe, whether it's a song about poverty in Trenchtown, whether it's a song, No Woman, No Cry, you will hear Bob Marley's song with great frequency. But you can't hear Peter. What is it that is about Peter Tosh's messages that appear to be so offensive to the status quo that they have to be hidden, they have to be suppressed? What is it about Peter Tosh as a performer that, as radical as his peers are or were, that they don't suffer with the same, what's the word I'm looking for? The same kind of muzzling. Censorship is the word. Their music seems to be far less censored than Peter Tosh. And of course, it's a rhetorical question. One of the things people don't know is Peter Tosh, unlike Bob Marley at the height of his career, was extremely loved and revered by the Jamaican people. If you look into history and you look into the way history is written, you would think that Jamaicans were always in love with Bob Marley, but the truth is that they weren't. And you hear this criticism a lot from some members of the Marley family, that Jamaicans weren't necessarily that supportive of Bob Marley's music. People saw Peter Tosh as a spokesperson for the poor black, down-pressed. Because Peter said you must not call them oppressor because there's nothing upful about them. You must call them down-presser. Peter Tosh's wordplay was brilliant. But the point is, Peter was seen as the spokesperson for the poor black masses, and he was loved for it. When Peter said he doesn't want peace, he wants equal rights and justice, this resonated with the black people of Jamaica. When Peter talked about legalizing marijuana, he wasn't speaking simply of those who were members or followers of the Rastafari movement. The average working class black person in Jamaica smoked the herb, cooked with the herb, used the herb as a balm, used the herb for medicine, used the herb as relaxation. This is what Peter Tosh was advocating for. And I wonder oftentimes if the hero that Jamaican people found in Peter Tosh has been replaced with Bob Marley, forcefully, by calculated design. These are some of the questions I want us to ponder tonight. What happened? Why is it we are now left with the story of Peter Tosh as someone who was aggressive, hard to deal with, indisciplined? When you hear of the story of how he was murdered at his home, growing up, I always heard that it's because he failed to pay the debt or failed to pay a debt to a man who allegedly served prison time on his behalf. And I must tell you, growing up, I never felt that story was credible. But it was just one of those constant propaganda you would hear about how much of a horrible person Peter Tosh was. Every single overseas writer or producer, when I research what they have to say about Peter Tosh, amongst their praises and their adoration is always sprinkled in this commentary that Peter was hard to deal with, that he was unpleasant, that he was rude, dismissive. And this is the version of this man that we're left with. How true is that? Why has Peter Tosh's image been demonized? What happened to the idea of us choosing our heroes for ourselves and not allowing others to give us heroes that are more palatable, that look more friendly, that date white women. Mm. Mm. We have to ask ourselves these questions, failing which we will continue to make the mistakes that we've always made, where we allow our history to be written for us. We allow them to choose our history for us. We allow them to choose our heroes for us. The same is true with what they've done to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, where they want to paint Peter Tosh as this dark persona. How is one person the king of reggae and the other person seems to be a stain on reggae? Welcome, K. Dot. Welcome, K. Dot. Thanks for joining. So happy to have you as usual. Greetings, K. Dot. Wagwan.
Bless up. Me there. Go and listen, you know.
All right.
Yeah, man. Tasha, the last musical revolutionary we'll ever have. I don't have any more right now.
How do you compare him to
Real
Bob
authentic.
Marley?
Nah, man. Bob Marley soft, man. I put it as authentic. Really want to change things, you know. Bob Marley was a revolutionary still, but they never market him as such. Especially nowadays, they want to market it in more feel good music. The Three Little Birds, man. It was more than that. But then the the system is what it is, you know. But Peter Tosh was hardcore authenticity, man.
Or the shit stain,
You
as
know,
Peter would say.
the shit same. Yeah, man, the shit same, man. The shit same. You know.
Yeah, I love how you came
But
in. You came in singing K. Dot. I love Bob Marley as well. I have a lot of respect for the work he did and the
mm,
mission that he set out to accomplish. But when he said in his song, soon we'll find out who is the real revolutionary, I think he's talking about Peter, not himself.
mm, okay,
I think
fair
Peter,
enough.
I think I would more describe Bob Marley as a messenger. So he
Okay.
had the message, but not necessarily, I don't know if the message necessarily fully matched his life, his actions.
Mm,
I mean, we
mm,
can debate it, but I would more call Bob Marley a messenger, and
mm,
in that role, he executed it perfectly, being the
mm.
messenger. But I think Peter was an action man,
Yes,
and
yes,
he
yes,
lived that life.
yes, yes. Yeah.
So, any favorite Peter Tosh songs, K. Dot, and why?
Yeah, man. Me love the one, man. Oh, bumbo clat, man. Love it, man. Love it. Just like they sing, I can't sing that after a hard day at work, you know? Yeah, I like that one.
Interestingly, Peter Tosh, when he was speaking about, there's some background noise in your
Hold on. Can deal with it. Hold.
right. Thanks, K. Dot. So Peter Tosh, when he was speaking of the Bombaclad song, one of the things he reminded us of is that that was the quickest way to run Duppy. He would often remark that if you see a Duppy, part of our ancestral um, habits and beliefs was that evil spirits were afraid of those Jamaican words. And in fact, that is why you can't even say those words in public today. Many people don't know that, but if you say bomber clot and blood clot, these Jamaican so-called curse words, you can be arrested. You can be arrested because it was something, and Peter Tosh reminded us, it was something that it was outlawed from way back in the day because it struck fear into the hearts of the oppressors, the down pressers. And so that is one of the also the beautiful things about Peter Tosh. He always connected his life and his preachings to our ancestors, the ancestral reverence that we need to have in the way we spoke, in the things we ate, in the way we communicated with each other. Even though arguably we can argue that, well, he was very much deep into the Bible, which I don't know. I know, K that you have choice words for the Bible, but how do you feel? Because you said, K dot, you said you see Peter Tosh as a revolutionary, but Peter Tosh was a Bible man. Don't you think some would say that this shows that he did still have a colonized mind? K dot, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Bob Marley was also a Bible man. I think is the way you use a tool, it's where you use it. Because you can use in my later wisdom, you can use the Bible to spark revolutions too. Shamsha did it, Paul Bogle did it. God was also a Christian. So, I look at it and say part of the using is things how you understand yourself in this space of life and what you need to do and how you need to do it. Yeah. It's just part of the tool. It's just I use it as a tool. Because the down press I use it as a tool for down press. Right?
Yes,
The rest
but
of them,
but
yeah.
but the down presser didn't the down presser saw the Bible as a tool, whereas men like Peter Tosh saw the Bible as the ultimate truth. Don't you think that's a significant difference, and that may have affected his mind thinking
Yeah,
through a colonial religion?
well, I didn't know of him that he saw the Bible as the ultimate truth because I don't see the Bible as the ultimate truth. It's not a history book. I see the Bible as a book of mythologies to teach some little life lessons. Yeah, I never see it as a book you can create church from and create ministry and all them fuck with it. Me never see it that way. There. I still don't see it that way. But this is new to me, coming from you that he saw it as the ultimate truth. Because I never saw that book as any ultimate truth.
Well,
That's
I
not
mean,
not King James book. I mean, maybe the original book before King James, but certainly not King James book. You know.
did you know that Peter Tosh was had a black belt in karate?
Yes, I knew that also. Very good at nunchaku. The man had a sense of physical. He was aware physically. He had stability. This man a could ride a unicycle very well. You have to be good at handling your own stability to ride a unicycle very well. The man beat up a police though in a half a tree. Yeah, the man he was pretty good. He was pretty good. For my little research of him, I knew that. You know.
He reminds me of what I saw once someone commenting on Dr. Sebi, that he was one of those men that you couldn't wait for sickness to kill him.
Ah,
He had to
ah,
be killed because
ah,
of the way he
ah,
lived his life.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
I spoke with
Mm-hmm.
his wife a couple years ago, Marlene, and I was saying to her, so many people always associate Peter Tosh with ganja and marijuana. And of course, we know he was a marijuana advocate, but he was
Mm-hmm.
also an advocate for herbal remedies and the use of bush and bush tea and bush medicine.
Yeah, Yeah,
And we don't
yeah.
hear about that.
No, that part of him not promoted. That part of him is not promoted. Because remember, them time the marijuana, ganja, I mean prefer to call it ganja, was bad. It's all bad. Till when rich people now can set up ganja, cannabis authority and all of those things and make the money off it. You understand? Yeah.
So part of the history of Peter Tosh has to do, I was speaking earlier before you came on, with how he viewed Chris Blackwell's management of the Wailers.
Hmm.
And the fact that in his view and in many other people's opinions, Chris came in and pushed Bob Marley to the front. So whereas before you had a situation where you had three brethren, three brothers who saw themselves as equals, now you have a situation with this Jewish man who is pushing Bob to the forefront and treating the others as supporting staff or backup
Yeah.
singer.
Yeah. Well,
But
white
Peter
people
has
do what
been
white people do.
criticized for this and
Hmm.
said, well, maybe it was an ego trip and he should have understood that it was best for the band. What are your
Mm.
thoughts on that?
I, you know, had had it was a different manager, um, maybe the band would have lasted up to the time, I think the Chris White, well as him call him, put put cause that split in the band only for capitalistic reasons. And the fact that he want to push, this half caste guy who can play and sing very well to the rest of the world and make the most out of it. But it casts no aspersions and no bad aspersions on the talent and Bonnie and Peter. It's just that manager's style. It's just that what that manager choose to do.
And how should we view Bob Marley's acceptance of it? I saw a clip of where Bob was asked about how the band became left from being the Wailers to Bob Marley and the Wailers. And he kind of
Hmm.
just dismissed it like, boy, him never do it. I just,
Well,
I just
well,
so.
Keisha, I need more information. You see, what I am curious about. There is no documentation as to the real relationship between the three of them and what was happening up to the time that Chris can come up and say, we split them and call it Bob Marley Wailers. What was happening between them? What was happening? I do have enough information on that to really, you know, say something about why Bob accepted it or, based on what happened. I do have enough information to
Well,
feel make a statement.
I understand that, but just from the interviews we've seen, certainly, whilst they were alive,
Hmm.
Bob didn't put forward any good reason
Okay,
for
okay.
why. Well, I haven't heard, and he has been asked directly in interviews, why would you go along with this? And he just kind of sidestepped the issue. Um,
Well, mm,
and I don't know if you recall, Maxine Stowe, I believe her name is.
right.
One of the things she brought to our attention is the intellectual property use of a lot of
Mm,
songs that were written by the duo or the trio, but
hmm.
it was being recorded and rebranded as a Bob Marley song. I think Get Up Stand Up is one of them where the
Oh,
initial recording of that song, Peter had the lead vocals. But if you
oh,
ask anybody now about Get Up Stand Up, it's like a Bob Marley song.
oh.
So I'm very concerned about, as you said, the full background into what
Yeah.
happened and why it was
Do
so okay for Bob to go along with it.
but let's go. I don't know. Let's go a little bit further. You remember the lady who was with the Wailers and she was totally cut out of that. And she the other day they keep they did some session for a recording session. I think Richie Stevens and some did some recording session. She was the lady behind that tune, that love tune. Um, can't remember the name of it now. There was a love tune
She
that
Yes, I
I can't.
remember because the
Yes,
original the Wailing Wailers had a woman in it.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes, exactly. And them cut her right out of the thing. I'm yet to get her story as to what went down and what she was seeing from her side. There's so much stories that come out of that thing. So much of them. This beyond this one love movie. So much can be told. You know.
Well, that's interesting, K, because one of the things they say about Peter Tosh, which they say about a lot of foundational Rasta men, is that there was a lot of misogyny
Yeah,
and
of
a lot
course.
of the idea that women are must know your place and you're inferior. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
some may
mm-hmm.
say that the oppression that the black man in these organizations or religions meted out against black women, that it
Mm-hmm.
was their just karma when the white man did it to them.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear me.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly heard many persons put it like that. But let me ask you, Kada,
Mm-hmm.
this was raised in our discussion on Winnie Mandela as well. One of the things they often say about people with the spirit of a Peter Tosh, of a Malcolm X,
Mm-hmm.
of a Winnie Mandela, is that this uncompromising stance against Babylon, Down Presser, the shit stem, is simply not sustainable. It's too much fire, it's too reckless, it's too confrontational. And so we need someone like a Bob, like a Nelly, to ease us into freedom. What are your
Joke.
thoughts
No,
on that as it relates to Peter Tosh?
no, joke thing. They based on what is happening in a time and a people. The cosmos will produce martyrs to move things along. This is what I think. What we never had no place for the fire of a Paul Bogo. We had no place for the fire of a Sam Sharp. We had no place for the fire of a Marcus Garvey. What you trying to say? What they trying to say? No man. Oh man, that no make no sense. Where would we be? Where would we be in this time? No man, no man. It's beyond. You need fire starters. You have to have fire starters. The reason why our government, for example, right now, and the rest of them, and the gang in parliament can get with so much fuckery because we have no fire starters anymore. The system has no is on a plan to feminize masculinity. We get put make we so soft that they can do anything they want to do now. You need fire starters. You have to have fire. The problem is now the succession planning. That is our issue. That once somebody's made an example of, they cut off head and put it on a stick and parade it on the screen. Nobody else want to get into that because, we have cell phones and internet and all of those nice things now. We have enough distractions. Must provide us with some nice distractions. So who wants to do that? You know?
Lannis in the chat says the default Jamaican spirit and ethos is trying fire. I agree, which is why I was saying earlier If you look at the history of Peter Tosh's popularity, he was more popular among Jamaicans than Bob was. Bob was kind of pushed and, marketed to Jamaican people, but if you think of what was organic,
Yes, yes,
there's Dennis Brown,
yes.
which Jamaicans love as a lover, as a love tune man.
Mm-hmm.
But when
There's
it comes
Jacob
to
Miller too.
revolutionary music, Jamaicans love Peter Tosh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I want to backpedal a bit on Peter Tosh's life. He didn't really have any parents. Some people describe his upbringing as that of an orphan in Grange Hill, Westmoreland. His father, I believe, was a preacher who was known for impregnating all kinds of young girls in the neighborhood. And Peter
Still
once
happens
described,
today.
yes, yes, regular, typical
Typical pastor.
womanizer. Yeah.
Mm.
And of course, Peter described him once as a scoundrel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was eventually also abandoned by his mother and was raised only by his aunt up until he was like a teenager and he left. And what I'm curious about is this idea of nature versus nurture. And we see this too in a lot of great men and women, where you have a man not formally educated, not classically trained in any instrument, trains himself, develops this very deep philosophy, is very eloquent in speech, a practical poet in his word usage. And yet we have people talking about how to raise children to be smart. Children who are raised without fathers are going to be useless. Isn't Peter Tosh's life a clear example that nature is oftentimes more important than nurture, K. Dot?
Yes, but nature is allowed to nurture amongst few distractions.
Explain that. I'm not following.
Back in the day, we were still kind of fine tuning and sharpening what our sound would look like to the world. We never had internet. We never had automated banking. We never had the structure of how you develop or you grow. You them time there was still a big community based. It was in depletion, yes, because of the whole political violence things started coming in, but there still was some foundations in terms of how you treat youth and how you deal with youth a certain way. Yes, there was still the abuse and all of that. But some things where youth I don't know, we couldn't get away with in them time. That's just how I mean. You could those times, I think you could focus more those times. You could focus on whatever you want to master. If I want to in them times be a master, grandmaster, martial artist easily because that was what I had. I didn't have anything else other than that. If I want to be a great cyclist, yes, I could. But because I couldn't, I didn't have really anything else other than that to pull me one side and pull me. There was
Oh,
no.
I
You
see what you're
understand what I mean?
saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
you're quite right because I I I've
The
seen an
matrix was
interview.
so strong.
Right. Peter once in an interview said that he was able to cultivate the Almighty's voice that was inside him.
Ah, ah,
So
ah.
I see what you mean, that he was more able, he had more opportunities to connect with himself.
All the way have the light. All the way have that light inside the way, All the way have the light.
Yes, Linus says way less
Yeah.
distractions and opportunities for
Mm-hmm.
escapism. Yeah, you can find yourself.
Yeah.
He said he just saw a man in the square playing guitar, and he said,
Right.
I want to learn guitar,
Yeah.
and just decided to teach himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
You
you're
see,
quite
you see,
right.
you see a man a put up a brick wall, and you want to learn how to do masonry. You see a man do carpentry work in the whole community, and the man is celebrated, and you want to do that. That kind of a thing.
And also, one of the things we always talk, well, I like to remind us of on this platform, Peter would have benefited from the concept of the village raises the child. So even though he would have been abandoned by his father and maybe his mother wasn't able to cope with raising him in poverty, it's not the same as a child in that same experience, no. Because Peter was
Yes.
still being taken to church because he was a church choir boy.
Uh huh.
He was
Uh huh.
still he obviously had some discipline in his life. When you see the way he speaks and conducts himself,
Yes. Yes.
he was
Yes.
obviously raised by a strong community, as opposed to no,
Mm.
if your biological parents not take care of your dog, name your supper.
Oh
You
yeah.
turn
Oh yeah.
street boy and
Oh yeah.
windshield wiper
Oh
boy.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just become a menace to society easily. Easily.
I want to go
Yeah.
back to something you said earlier, K. Dot, regarding feminization of men and the loss or lack of masculinity. Outside of people talking about him being a great musician, you see, as I said before, a lot of criticism around Peter Tosh's attitude. People saying he was arrogant, he was headstrong, he didn't listen, he didn't take counsel from anyone, he was uncompromising in his views. Some of the same criticisms you see with Marcus Garvey, him the too bossy. He thought he was the boss of everything. He wanted to be. And a lot of these criticisms are coming from black men. You heard even similar arguments against Malcolm X. Oh, Malcolm X shouldn't have spoken out against Elijah. He should have known his place. And I find it deeply ironic that men who are now complaining about the dearth of masculinity in society, when they criticize great men of old, they talk about, oh, he was too assertive. Imagine a man being another man telling another man, he's too assertive, he's too principled. He shouldn't speak out, he must work with the boss. Work with Chris Blackwell. Just stay behind Bob. And everything they criticize about Peter Tosh, Malcolm, Marcus is what I would describe as the very essence of black masculinity. What
I
are
would
your
agree
thoughts on
with you.
that, K Dot?
I agree with you. It is the essence of based on what we have suffered over how much years. Is yeah, it is pretty much us. It's pretty much us. But you see, what has happened, as I said before, the distraction and they pretty much long and short of it. We have a quest to the fuckery. We can't because in some way and somehow we are benefiting from that shit. Either we getting some money on the table through the promotion, we getting more likes. We just a quest to the fucker. I don't know how the hell we're going to create an army of change at any which way. I don't
The
know.
same people who criticize Peter Tosh for being too assertive are the same people who would allow P. Diddy to buck break them. Yes, I said what I
Oh
said.
yeah.
I
Oh
said
yeah.
what I said.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Because this idea
Mhm.
that you should just go along with what the boss is saying,
Oh
the
yeah.
big man
Oh
said
yeah.
this.
But like that. Mhm. 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 I mean, look. If you want to take P Diddy as an example, he has been doing that for years. Him and R. Kelly has been doing that for years. He has been that for years. Epstein and all of them doing that all shit for years and years, years and years.
Yes, absolutely. And to think that these great examples of black masculinity like Peter Tosh is being demonized as men who were too much.
Mhm.
They were too
Mhm.
uncompromising is
Mhm.
it's quite embarrassing.
Of course, of course, of course. I hear that same shit being said about Haiti too. Them should rebel, them should do that. What the hell? What the fuck? I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
The other thing about Peter Tosh's life, which I want us to consider as well, so much of the debauchery and violence and criminality that we hear being promoted in modern reggae acts and dancehall acts. Some people have said, some sociologists and so-called music experts have said it's a simple matter of art reflecting life. So people are singing about what they're going through, or they can't do any better than to sing about violence and this kind of debauchery. But what could be worse than the violence that Peter was seeing in Trenchtown during those days? How do we justify using that line of reasoning when men like Peter Tosh, who were actively being beaten within an inch of their life by police, never come out and make a gunman song? What are your views on that, K-Dot?
Well, if let's look at the history from from the Paul Bogle thing, where you we remember what created the police force, and I say yeah, it was a police service, a police force. Up to that time, up to Coral Gardens, up till now, um, you when you say that the police supposed to protect and serve, and you get that treatment from the person supposed to protect and serve you, it does something to your psyche. It does something to the community psyche. When the system set you up in such a way that being poor is actually a crime, what you're going to sing about? Life in a bed of roses over the blue mountain yonder and what have you. You're not going to sing that. If I lived in the inner city and my lifestyle was different from now, I would probably one of them too. I probably worse than Vibes Cartel and Mavada and all of them people that took together and Ninja Man. I probably be worse.
But Peter didn't sing the kind of destructive songs they are creating.
Yeah, but as I said before, the Matrix wasn't so the Matrix and all the distraction wasn't so pronounced then that you could have a measure of focus, and and the community wasn't as it was they did as it was now. There was still foundation and tenets as to how a youth should be in the face of, in growing up. There was still little of that left. So he found a way to find that and also and work with that. That was still there was still a instrument of savior per se in how in the Peter Tosh we see it eventually.
There's a viral interview clip of Peter being asked about why it seemed as though some of his records weren't being promoted in the way they ought to have been. And one of the things he said in response to the interviewer was that maybe it's too bumbleclot black for them. How true is that in relation to Bob being given to us as the king of reggae versus Peter? Was Peter truly too bumbleclot black for them or for us? Is he still too bumbleclot black for us? K dot?
Yes, he's still too bumble black for us. I like my coffee black, but not that black. Yeah, yeah. You bear in mind that he wasn't. I mean, this might be trivial, but he wasn't half cast, as they say. And he was protein straight up authentic revolutionary. He was a fire starter. You couldn't have that kind of a you know blazing fire when we're trying to create you know decent post-colonial citizens who listen to the early Byron Lee people and songs and all of those things and those nice you know um um Jamaica tourist board mentality, like you couldn't have that. You want white people to come over and enjoy the place because the tourist thing started to really itch up them time there, you know but at the, at the forefront of all of this, the POCG are the little cliques to work with government and do things, to influence society the way they want to. They still have it now. Remember that you have that working in the back as well. So of course, yeah, in two black free, you can't have them people that rile with people. You can't have that, you know. You can't have them people that, finding out who they really are. Remember, you have governments who come here and ban books and all of those things. The same Coral Garden government. You have the governments who come and ban books and all them. So you can't bet the people that recognize who they are. So people like those, yeah, you have to find a way to stifle them.
In
You want
terms
a
of
decent.
in,
Hmm.
in terms of the content of some of his songs, Bob Marley made us of similar content, lyrics
Hmm.
that were also very revolutionary, and yet he was constantly promoted and pushed as this superstar. I don't think it was fair to say that a man who presented as Bob Marley with his hair and the way he spoke and the way he dressed, I don't know if it would be fair to say that he was palatable, because he certainly was not. Are we to believe that skin color mattered so much that even though Bob and Peter could be singing the same thing, that Bob was still seen as less threatening? Okay, that
Yeah. Well, I I think so. I think so. But putting the color thing aside, who are the wider catalog? Who are the wider catalog? Because how much revolutionary tune the revolutionary tune them what Bob Marley sing, how much of them play upon radio? How much of them play on radio? Them choose the world anthem as one love, one heart. I don't think they even they listen to all the lyrics good, but anyway, stiff neck fools. Him do a rock and roll tune, reggae and Broadway, all of them tune them. You don't unless you go in and know the album them and know which part the revolutionary tune them. You're going to you're a little man friend a foreign, a little white man from foreign. You're going to listen to get all the little touristy tune them, the little nice, easy listening tune them, you know. So
That's
he
true.
had a catalog to market him as a gentle Rasta man, come out a 9 Mile. He had that catalog. Peter Tosh never really had that catalog. He never really had that.
I must tell you that the first song I became familiar with from Peter Tosh as a child was Johnny Be Good. And you
Okay.
might know that Johnny Be Good was a remake, I believe, of
Yes, yes,
an
yes, of
American.
course. Of course, of
But there
course.
was something about the song and the video that as a child, even though there was nothing particularly revolutionary about the lyrics, it
Hmm.
made me deeply reflective and sad. I don't know why to this day. There's something about Peter Tosh's delivery. And when I think about this issue, I often feel like there are things that are communicated through presence, through our intention, through our vibration that is
Quite
far
so.
greater than the words.
Quite so.
So
Quite
Peter
so.
and Bob could come out and Peter could say get up, stand up in the original recording of the song. And
And it
when
means
Bob
something
Marley
different.
said
It
get
come
up,
out
stand
different.
up
It
in
move
the
different.
remake, it
It
no
vibrate
sound so
different.
threatening.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it vibrate different. This is
Even though
true.
they're
This
saying
is
the
true.
same exact
You say
words.
the same thing. It hit different. It hit different. Yeah, man. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Definitely
Ian,
we hit
welcome to
different.
the stage. Thanks for joining us.
Blessed love, everyone. Blessed love.
Bless up people.
Every time.
Talk to us. What you have for us?
Why we just a listen, I listen and, when you compare Bob and Peter, it's like comparing Tupac and a Biggie. When you have a radical energy,
No.
is no, honestly, because you have to look on the persona and the personality and the delivery and how them speak. A Tupac would have speak very aggressive and the bumbo clot and them thing they like how Peter. So the how him put himself across to the people would have point him out as them say thug life for Tupac. So he was looked upon as a gangster or a radical individual. Same thing with Peter. Peter come across very strong-willed based on what he wanted and based on his stance. You say Bob sweet and stuff, but Bob, remember, in a Bob interview to him, it's still radical in enough instances, and it go back to the time when discrimination was at hand, and his story was very evident when him talk about him father being a white man on a plantation or whatever the story was. So he would have been gravitated to more than a Peter Tosh. Cause Peter no radical and come from the country and him have a different approach to everything. But it's a deep conversation. Want to listen some more and see how much I can add in.
Ian, I
Yeah.
actually think Peter was softer in his delivery in interviews.
Okay, you
I
think
do
so?
believe, yes, I think
Yeah.
Peter was far more eloquent, far more patient,
Yes.
far more soft spoken.
Yes.
It's just that he had less contradictions.
Mm.
And again, no disrespect to Bob. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's just because of the circumstances of history why it becomes relevant in conversation to compare them. But
Mm-hmm.
don't be mistaken. I have a lot of love and respect for Bob Marley. However, it would be remiss of me not to point out that the praise and worship that people have for Bob Marley when it comes to the brilliant things he said pales in comparison. to Peter Tosh. Peter Tosh speaks like a professor. Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
listen to Bob Marley and no shade, but sometimes, boy, I have to wonder. Bob just born a nice spliff, man. Because enough things where him said is just the love of Bob Marley why people even
Yeah,
resonate with it. Because some of the things he said weren't that eloquent at all. And again, I'm simply pointing out because one is demonized and one isn't. In that sense. In
yeah.
that sense. So
Got one
so
real
so
revolution, you know.
yes. Yes.
So maybe
Um
that's why Peter Tosh was looked upon, demonized because, all right, think about it, where energy is something that can be felt, and the oppressor knows the energy of a what them call it, a messiah, within an oppressed race of people. So whenever you find somebody who can talk and make people really move into action, you're gonna find that person to be demonized by the control media, because the publishing and all of those things are controlled by the oppressor. So you have to look at it from that angle. We have never controlled the narrative, you know.
yes, I agree. And imagery is very much important. As I said before, Peter Tosh is 6'4", 6'5", black, handsome, fit. No, I mean, come on. He's a tall, black, tall, dark, handsome, well spoken.
Is a true example of the African man, eh?
He's a true example of
Mm-hmm.
black masculinity,
Mm-hmm. So
as
them try to
opposed
hear
to
that.
a Bob Marley, what, 5'2", light skin. You ask him a question in an interview, him give you a parable as opposed to an answer. You know, Peter Tosh put the living fear of the black god
Mm-hmm. That's
in the
true.
down presser. Even as K. Dot said, even with the use of the so-called Bible, Peter Tosh used his words. He didn't have to raise his voice. He could say some, as he would say, cramp and paralyze them with a simple, soft spoken response. And I encourage everyone to revisit some of Peter Tosh's interviews, which are still on YouTube. You really need to look at them. But Ian, I wanted to ask you. Tosh says Bob was 5'8", which is like being 5'2" for a man. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, 5'8", 5'2", not much difference. But Ian, I wanted to ask you the same question that I asked K. Dot earlier about all the cries, modern day complaints that we are seeing an absence of masculinity amongst black men. And yet the leaders that are being criticized by men, when you think of the criticisms about them, it sounds to me, I would interpret it as these men were too masculine. These men not take no talk. These men not, them no response for a guy. They're living according to their truth. Isn't this what black masculinity is? So how we say we want black masculinity and then we want to demonize Peter Tosh, Malcolm X, Garvey. What are your thoughts on that, Kate? Ian?
Well, the demonization of masculinity, I can even bring it to a two poles, masculinity, femininity. All of these things is demonized based on the fight. So, how can I put masculinity on a scale when the black population has a fight and has a reason to stand up for something? So within a civilized society, you might find that everything is going in order. Nobody has to really stand up for their rights to be human and stuff like that. When you find a group of people who have to be fighting for their rights just to be human, just to be black, then everybody can point a finger at how they will approach it. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to approach it in a nice, pretty boy way where so your people are suffer from oppression for years and stuff like that, and you choose to fight. So masculinity in that sense is not gonna be, it's gonna be classed as toxic, if you put it that way, if you want to use that word. They're gonna say it's toxic because it come off very radical. And the approach, like Malcolm X would say, hey, separate from the white man and let's develop our own nation and all of these things just to look after the black man. We know that that's a solid approach, because we know, say, in order to build our economy and our society, we have to do something like that, based on the fact that oppression is real. So it's just based on the situation, really, why a one would say it is toxic. But if you look on it, it's really just standing up for the need of your people. So if I see my people is in need and I choose to talk, and it may sound away to everybody else because you might not have to stand up for your rights because your rights has been protected by the bigger heads, then I understand. But when I once say toxic, I guess they're just looking at the fact that they're classing it on what they say, the perfect world. And somebody a act out in the perfect world, then you could say, hey, say that man there, him off him rocks. Something wrong must be wrong with him. But in our case, where we are not living in the perfect society as black people, and we have to really stand up for what is right for us, then I'm guessing that's the reason for that. But it's a deep thing. It's a deep thing, and it's really, because think about it. Why do we have to really say we are stand up for masculinity and all of these things when we are men? And if we never have a fight for certain things, then we wouldn't have this problem.
Well, but breaking was a thing and is still a thing.
Breaking.
But breaking.
Oh, butt breaking. Well, yeah,
Hmm.
because remember, that's what I'm saying. The slave master really implemented and do a whole heap of these things to our people, so it break us down. It go back to the same
Ian,
femininity
we are
where
but breaking each other now. P Diddy is but breaking the
Puff
entire rap.
Puff Daddy is given, is like, is the same oppression, Is the same slave master thing, where the slave master get the black man the whip and give him the power for rule over him black brothers. So that's how him get the gatekeeper role, by the white man giving it to him, because he would have never had that power over his people if he wasn't given that power by them. So at the end of the day, P Diddy a do him a do. You have people who really lust for the money and the riches and the vanity, and that's why them go lay down or go and party. Cause me sure them hear the history and hear what go on a theme thing for years. And you as a young person coming up, you still decide for go there. That means say you endorse, or would I say you licky licky then, and you choose for run down the riches or the wealth. So you choose that for yourself, So within our community, we understand that the white man choose who him want choose for rule over, once you decide to bow to him and kiss the ring of the Pope. So it's just like that. So we're going to find some Oreos amongst our people, and we have to know the Oreo them, and can separate the Oreos from the true black man. We stand up for in black family and the structure that was there before everything else. I'm gonna stray a little bit. I was listening to an African woman speak just this rising, and she was speaking on the whole feminism and how people are fighting for the feminism cause. And all of this started because of the whole fight against white woman oppressed in Europe, and they draw the black population within their fight. And I do believe this is something that has been happening for years. Every time you have a fight for the white people, where them a fight for something coming to rights, them use our oppression so that we can start a march, start a what we call it, do a protest on their behalf to get something written off in the bills. So, most time we have to stop, march on their behalf, and just do what we have to do. Because we do know what we need to do and we know what the community need. So we just have to do it and stop depend upon the oppressor for really tell us what to do and then in class we as toxic masculinity.
Thanks for that, Ian. I don't think the black women who are getting their heads bashed in by their black husbands would agree that they were marching for white women. But K dot, Ian mentioned this concept of certain black people being licky licky for fame and fortune. How much of that played into the disagreements between Peter, Bunny, Bob, and Chris Blackwell? How much of that you think influenced Peter Tosh's decision to part ways with Chris? Is it because he felt Bob was being seduced by the riches and was forgetting the foundation and the movement? What are your thoughts?
Well, what you just said a while ago, I can only speculate about that. But one thing I can say, with a personality like Peter Tosh, you can't contain him. You can't, he's not a man you can bully and contain and bend and open acquiesce to your wishes. You understand? I think I don't think it was much lickiness. I think it was more a thing of ego, you know?
Ego on the part of Peter or on the part of Bob?
On the part of both of them, but Peter is going to be much more caustic in terms of what him want and how him see him welfare coming from where him coming from.
I think that's a bit unfair, K dot.
I,
If
I
if
don't
you
mean it. I don't mean it in a bad way, because ego still have its place in expression of that kind of business. You can be a
No,
genteel teddy bear in
I
that kind of a
mean
business.
in the sense of, if me, you, and Lannis start a group
Mm.
and we call it Lion Paw, for
See?
example, and we all good, we suffering together, we struggling together. Here comes this white man and say, "Hey, you guys are so talented. Let me sign you and promote you." And the next thing you look on the flyer, it says Lioness featuring Lion Paw. Is it an ego thing or at that point or a principle thing?
Well, that's part of the
Especially remember, okay, that bear in
yes.
mind that in many respects, Chris Whitewell represent the Babylon where they must sing about.
That's right. That's right.
So
That's
here
right.
comes this guy. All of us were on equal playing field. Then now you him take out one of us, put us in the lead, and change our name. Is that a ego thing or is that a principle thing?
Principle. That's principle. That's principle. That's it's unethical.
Linus in the chat
Yeah, measure.
says there was definitely ego on the part of Bob. Of the three, he was the least talented, least sexy, but thought he was fit to take center stage, to the point where he believed he was the premier messenger of Rastafari. I 100% co sign that, Linus. Ian, what are your thoughts on that?
That's an ego. Well, based on what actually happened when when Chris Blackwell took Bob Marley and the name change and everything. It could be ego and it could be just Blackwell getting into his mind. Cause you have to remember Bob died at what, 33? That means when he was doing all of these work, he was a young man. And in the musical work and Blackwell probably getting a brain and his connection to the white family is very close. Even though he might not know him father so well, but him very close to the white side. So Blackwell would have a plan for him probably, knowing say he would have been a better connection to the European side of the world. So you never know. So, you can say him getting a Bob head. And as you say, you can say the ego get the best of Bob as a young person where the limelight and everybody seem to be drawn to you and stuff like that. So it could be a lot of it in the mix.
Give thanks, Ian. I want to shift slightly to Peter Tosh and his participation or membership in the Rastafari movement. He was very clear that he was a follower of Rastafari, Haile Selassie. But I think in many ways, despite what you feel about the movement, despite what you think about the way of life, there was a certain dignity and an air of principle that men like Peter Tosh had when it comes to how they express their faith and their beliefs, which seems woefully lacking in modern day Rastafari. Peter Tosh was able to express himself in a way that you had no question, you were left with no question of what he believed. But at the same time, he didn't come across as being foolish and wayward. And I think a lot of that dignity has been lost in the modern day Rasta movement. I know it's going to be speculation, K. Dot, but I'm curious. What do you think Peter Tosh would say about the current state of the Rasta movement? Knowing what we know about what he said, even about other types of black music and how he criticized other black people, what do you think would his position be on the current state of the Rasta movement if he were alive today?